Urgent. The counterattacks by the Ukrainian armed forces have brought Russia to its knees. Putin has big problems. Trump made a new shocking statement. This will determine the fate of the war. The Russian army is on the brink of disaster. Russia is howling. There is simply no equipment. The Ukrainian armed forces stunned everyone with this strike on a crucial facility in the very heart of Russia. All of this and more in our episode of Hotspot. Intense fighting and explosions all across Russia. Fighters from the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade carried out a cleanup operation in the Kharkiv region. Exclusive footage you can't miss. A new breakthrough in the Ukrainian armed forces. Zelensky stated that Kursk is on the negotiation table. The Ukrainian army is confidently tearing through the Russians. All the details in the report.
The occupiers in Russia are in the crosshairs of Ukrainian defenders. Fighters from the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade carried out a cleanup operation in the Kharkiv region. They noted that no Russian occupier will go unpunished. The armed forces of Ukraine are successfully resisting the Russian army, inflicting damage on the enemy, significant losses in personnel and equipment. According to the General Staff on February 23rd, Ukrainian forces destroyed over 1,000 occupiers, 9 tanks and 44 artillery systems. The enemy... Meanwhile, while the occupiers are counting their losses at the front, the Ukrainian armed forces successfully struck the Ryazan oil refineries in Russia. On the night of February 24th, once again, a strike hit the Ryazan oil refinery, which is involved in supplying the Russian occupying army.
It's no coincidence that the strikes are aimed not at the storage facilities for petroleum products, but specifically at valuable equipment, due to the sanctions against the Russian Federation. It's difficult to find replacements for imported components, and that's why the oil refineries are forced to going for an extended repair. I should note that the Ryazan oil refinery is one of the largest oil refineries in Russia. It is located 200 kilometers from the capital, Russian Federation, and it provides logistical support not only to the Russian army but also to the capital region.
This is already the 3rd attack on the plant since the beginning of 2025. In addition, on February 23rd, the Defense Forces struck a fuel depot in the Tula region. Doctor, I'm going to give you the quality of the gestural process now. Bushanishas, babij. Bushanishas, Bushanishas. These are not the first and won't be the last attacks on Russia's oil refineries. UAVs often fly in for visits, striking military and critical infrastructure targets on the territory of the aggressor country. Meanwhile, the operation in the Kursk region continues, and the Russian army has once again confirmed its inhumanity and brutality. The occupiers shot Ukrainian soldiers and filmed it.
The occupiers is intentionally fully understanding possible informational, political, and accordingly economic, and the consequences for their country. They document war crimes with the aim of exerting psychological pressure on 2 target audiences. These are the direct servicemen of the Ukrainian Defense Forces who are successfully fighting in the Kursk region, and accordingly their family members, meaning the civil society right on the territory of Ukraine. The goal is to sow chaos and panic, distrust in the actions of the central authorities and military leadership.
Let's remember that President Zelensky stated that the Kursk region, part of which is controlled by the armed forces of Ukraine, is not of interest to our country as territory. Zelensky emphasized that part of the Kursk region could be used for an exchange for Ukrainian lands.
Even before Trump's inauguration, there was a report in Bloomberg that should be seen as a controlled information leak, specifically from the Russian side, about the possibility of territorial exchanges, namely the Kursk region, for the occupied territories in several areas of Ukraine. So the Russian Federation, despite the loud statements and the Russian dictator Putin, and accordingly Peskov on the fact that such exchanges are impossible, they fully understand that the continued holding of positions by the Ukrainian Defense Forces in the Kursk region is a colossal informational and political defeat for the Russian side.
Meanwhile, Iran and North Korea are helping Russia continue its bloody war against Ukraine. Russia is increasingly relying on their support, and this is being discussed at the Institute for the Study of War. The Kremlin received Shahed drones from Iran. He also helped Russia establish its own factory for producing Shahed drones in the Republic of Tatarstan, and 50% of the shells used by the Russian army are North Korean munitions. This was stated by the head of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, Kyrilo Budanov.
the RF military-industrial complex as a result of personal criminal cases. Sectoral sanctions are practically unable to meet the needs of the Russian army for artillery shells and heavy armored vehicles. So we're talking about the fact that at the moment the Russian Federation is using stocks of Soviet-era weapons, but they are not limitless, and therefore further replenishment, means of destruction, and accordingly logistical support can only be secured through external supplies. First of all, this is North Korea.
And while some are helping the bloody dictator Putin, other civilized countries are severing ties. In support of Ukraine, Australia has implemented its largest sanctions package since 2022 against 70 individuals and 79 organizations linked to Russia.
So the fighters from the 60th Mechanized Brigade are destroying Russian armored vehicles using the American portable Javelin anti-tank missile system. According to the anti-tank soldiers, the most important thing in their work is speed. You can't fire your position too much. I fired the Javelin and ran away fast. We run and hide because the return fire can come very quickly. Since the start of the day, there have already been 62 battles on the front line. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine notes that there are the most Russian assaults in the Pokrovsk direction. The occupying army continues to suffer heavy losses.
Since July 2024, the losses of the Russian occupiers, according to the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, amount to about 150,000 personnel. To understand the nature of the losses, this is the strength of the Western Military District, the army of the occupying country. So the nature of the losses is just colossal. This is in the Pokrovsk direction. Daily losses of the Russian occupiers in the Pokrovsk direction, according to the same main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, are up to 500 personnel. These include both irretrievable losses and accordingly sanitary losses. So we can say that the monthly losses of the occupiers just in the Pokrovsk direction are around 15,000.
In the Lyman area, Ukrainian forces successfully repelled Russian assaults in the area of Novolyubovka in the Luhansk region, as well as in Yampolivka and Zelenaya Dolina in the Donetsk region. The enemy attempted to advance in the area of Petropavlivka, Zarizove, Dvorekne, and the Volchansk-Kharkiv region. In the Kupiansk direction, the Russians are trying to assault without armor, the military says. One of the factors that may influence why the Russians are using less armored equipment is the effective work of our units. As soon as they see the activity of the occupiers, for example, a column of Russian equipment moving, our bombers immediately start taking off. FPV pilots are at work and they are destroying. Andrei Rubtsov, head of the communications department of the 116th Separate Mechanized Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. In an interview with Suspilne, in the Sumy direction, border guards destroyed a Russian howitzer and a pontoon crossing. In the Pokrovsk area, the soldiers of the Krylo unit eliminated a tank, an infantry fighting vehicle, a howitzer, an ammunition depot, military transport, and the infantry of the occupiers.
Among those eliminated was a Russian UAV crew. The occupiers were hiding among the graves in the cemetery. They were destroyed by FPV masters. The main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine on Facebook.
Meanwhile, in the temporarily occupied Crimea, soldiers of the 810th Russian Marine Brigade are trying to avoid being sent to the Kursk region, where the Russian army is suffering heavy losses. According to partisans,
soldiers of the brigade are trying to transfer en masse to other units, realizing that they might be sent to the Kursk region. Rumors that there is almost no chance of returning alive only increase the panic among the personnel. Some of these Russian soldiers have already joined the Atesh and are providing us with valuable information. There is a particular interest in the command of the unit, which the soldiers speak of very unfavorably. The reasons are obvious: a dismissive attitude towards subordinates, coercion to assault, and fear of sabotage among their own soldiers. From a message by the partisan movement Atesh on Telegram.